When I tell you we argued about every single thing that you could potentially argue about, we did. No lie, no joke, no exaggeration. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our channel. Last week, I did a solo video where I shared what it's really like being in a relationship with so many differences from my husband. And today's video is not far off from there. Today, we're talking about conflict. You don't necessarily think about how different you can be when it comes to how you approach confrontation, what you consider conflict, how you resolve disagreements, all of that stuff. So our mixed everything dynamic carries into that as well. If you're enjoying these videos and you want to see more inside our marriage type content, feel free to drop a like on the video or even a comment suggesting what you'd like to see next. But without further ado, let's talk about conflict. I'm not sure what the exact terms are. I can throw them up here on the screen if I say something incorrectly, but I am a confrontational person. I identify a problem, I logic through the problem, and then I want to fix the problem, like right then. I don't want to wait. I would prefer to just get it taken care of and move forward. My husband, on the other hand, is very conflict avoidant. He doesn't want anything to rock the boat. If something is a problem, he'll just stuff it down and not say anything about it until maybe one day he blows up about it in an irrational, disproportionate way. While I approach things from a logical standpoint and I kind of remove feelings from the equation, my husband is very emotionally driven. The first argument we ever had was about a smoothie. I am not joking. We were about 3 months into our relationship. I had spent the night, I think, in Alex's apartment, and I was getting ready to leave, but before I left, I was going to make myself a smoothie. My smoothies tend to consist of chocolate protein powder, oatmeal, frozen banana, peanut butter, those kinds of things. Like, I love me some chocolate peanut butter combination. And so that's what I was making myself that morning. Alex was about to hop into the shower and shouts over his shoulder like, "Hey, could you make me a smoothie too?" So I asked him, "What do you want?" He goes, "Well, the same like yours, except put apple in it." And I was like, okay, ew. I made my smoothie and then I made his with the added apple. I give him his smoothie in his room, and then I went to the other room to drink mine and kind of continue getting ready to leave. This man storms out of his bedroom with the smoothie, slams it down on the counter, and goes, "Why don't you ever do what I tell you to do?" I looked up and went, "Who do you think you're talking to?" We started arguing, me about his abrasive and unreasonable tone, and him about how I hadn't made the smoothie correctly. Turns out, he didn't want my smoothie at all because he doesn't like chocolate and he doesn't like peanut butter like that. But that's what he asked for. And then he goes, "No, I thought that you would know what kind of smoothie I like." And I said, "Alex, how am I supposed to know what you don't tell me? I don't understand how you would expect from me something you never shared with me and then get upset because you didn't get what you didn't ask for." He then sat down on the couch next to me and said, "You know what, Krista, I really care about you, but if we're going to argue, this isn't going to work because I don't want any problems. I don't want you to feel any problems. I don't want for either of us to ever be frustrated. So if this is something where we're going to be frustrated with each other, then we just need to part ways." I don't remember the exact conversation because it was about 4 years ago. But I, in that conversation, asked him, "What is an ideal relationship for you?" And part of his response was one that does not involve any arguing ever, where you just get along all the time, like Disney relationship type stuff. I remember telling him, "Alex, having conflict or having differences of opinion is normal. We are two separate and different people, and we see the world very differently. If you feel really strongly about something, and I feel really strongly about that same thing, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, an argument is essentially us feeling discomfort about each other's stances, and then we have to decide if we want to work toward a common ground." I remember saying that to him and him going, "No one's ever told me that before. If conflict is something that we're going to have to deal with, then we can do it as long as we figure out how to Communicate. Because Alex does not make a whole lot of logical sense when he argues, I found myself just shutting him down. I remember saying, like, that's stupid. I don't understand how you have this point of view. That's so ignorant. And he just started to close up and he wouldn't argue. Even if he didn't like something or he didn't want to try something, he would do it because he would just want to avoid arguing that much. For a moment, it was bliss because I didn't have to listen to all of the stuff that didn't make sense. But it was very obvious, on the other hand, that my husband was shutting down. I realized I didn't want a husband that would just clam up every time I said how I felt. I didn't want for him to feel like he wasn't heard, and I didn't want to hurt him by calling him names. I didn't want to break him down by not listening to him. I wanted to find a way to hear what he had to say, but also discuss it productively. I'm really thankful that we incorporated premarital counseling into our relationship so early on, because we had somebody who was the sounding board for how we both felt and really made us face the issues head on and think about on a regular basis, is this something I'm willing to do to make this relationship work? There are times I have to remind myself, Alex is not arguing like an American. He is arguing like a Latino. And in Latin American culture, there is an aversion to going directly to the heart of the subject. So you like to go around in circles and maybe touch the topic every once in a while, but not really say, hey, this is what's bothering me. And so I will listen with the cultural perspective of my husband is Latin American, and if he is going in circles, I need to listen for the points that consistently touch throughout his argument, and then I know what the issue is. And as silly as it sounds, I've also realized that I cannot change my husband, no matter how much logic or points of proof I put in front of him. He is who he is, he feels how he feels, and he has to come to the point where he is willing to change his mind. I cannot change his mind for him. Since that is out of my sphere of control, I focus on what I can control. I control my words. I control my attitude. I control what I subject myself to and what I do not subject myself to. I've completed a lot of devotionals and biblical studies regarding conflict and how to resolve conflict in a marriage. And a few points have stuck with me. I learned to think Alex was God's son before he was my husband. I was God's daughter before I was Alex's wife. So when I pray, there are times where I'm like, God, he's your son. You brought us together for a reason. We're two completely different people. We're both learning how to live together. And if part of this marriage is us kind of sharpening each other or iron sharpening iron, then I'm part of the process, but what I'm not going to do is subject myself to irrational conversation. So I'm gonna need you to get your son. In the meantime, help me learn how I can be more effective in communicating with my husband. I have really strong boundaries in terms of how I am willing to argue and how I am not willing to argue. And I will tell Alex, I will tell anyone who argues with me, listen, I am willing to have a back and forth discussion with you. That's not a problem. But the moment you raise your voice, I'm walking away because it's not productive at that point. I'm not yelling at you. You're not going to yell at me because that's a sign of disrespect. And that's not the way that we're handling this discussion. There have been times where, people will raise their voice and I'll just get up, I'll walk out, I'll go to the gym. And I always have something productive that I plan to do. I don't just go to the next room where that person can then follow me to the next room. I don't play that nonsense. If you do not respect my boundary while we're having an argument, then I am willing to get up and walk away from that situation. I strongly believe that what helps us the most is the fact that we both have the same faith and the same morals and the same values. Those key points in common are the ones that dictate how we handle and comport ourselves when we get past the really rugged emotions of an argument. And the sentiment after the argument has always been the same, that we want to stay together. We want to figure out how to make it work. What I'm proud of is that we have both made incremental and sustained improvement over time toward better conflict resolution. That to me is an indication that we are growing and that while we are not perfect, we are learning. My hope is that we continue moving in that fashion. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if we took some leaps and bounds in learning how to handle conflict together. But what keeps me hopeful is that every time there is an improvement. So it's hard, but the Lord is developing in me a patience that I didn't even know I was capable of, y'all. I don't even know who I am sometimes. Y'all, filming this video, I was all over the place. So I really hope that I'm able to edit this in a way that makes sense and feels enjoyable to watch. As we always say on our channel, with God, all things are possible. And I will see you all next week. Take care.